Have you ever felt like something wasn't right, even when everything seemed perfect? Ever had that feeling that the truth was between the lines, but you couldn't prove it? That's that. This is not imagination. It is discernment. And no, he's not just any ability, he's the true superpower of the chosen. While the world teaches you to follow rules, discernment teaches you to break them when they imprison your soul. Forget everything they said about following your heart or listening to others. The biggest trap is precisely this, thinking that discernment equals intuition or, even worse, thinking that it is synonymous with strong opinion. It is not. Discernment saves you from falling into emotional, spiritual, financial traps. It shows you who's really with you, what manipulation disguised as affection is, and what patterns you need to break if you really want to live a purposeful life. And the craziest? Nobody teaches you that, hitherto. Because in this video, you'll discover why discernment is the greatest power a chosen one can have. And how to activate, strengthen, and use it, even when the whole world is telling you you're wrong. Ready to see what few can? There is a type of vision that is not learned in books or taught in schools. It is that kind of perception that pierces the veil of appearances and sees what is hidden between the lines of life. This is discernment. But not just any discernment, the spiritual. A true, chosen one develops this ability not as a logical technique, but as a subtle, almost invisible, power that protects him from emotional, spiritual, and even energetic traps. And yes, there is a huge difference between being smart and having discernment. While many get lost in shallow judgments, guided only by what the eyes see, true discernment operates on another frequency. He is what makes someone realize, in the middle of a compliment, an intention of manipulation. It's that chill down your spine that appears out of nowhere when a situation seems too good to be true. And you know what's curious? Sometimes this spiritual gift arises precisely in moments of inner silence, when the mind is silent and the heart listens. Therefore, discernment is more about feeling than thinking. Practical examples. One of them is to learn to move away from environments that suck your energy, even without an apparent, logical reason. Another is to notice, in a common conversation, when someone is hiding something under beautiful words. Sharp intuition is the lantern in the dark, but it is discernment that decides whether or not you will follow the path it illuminates. This spiritual gift, when used well, is like an inner beacon that guides the chosen one through the darkness of doubt. And if you've ever felt like something was wrong, but ignored? So it's time to understand why this gift is so often blocked. You know that moment when everything seems confusing and you can't see clearly what's in front of your eyes? Often, what prevents discernment from flourishing is not a lack of information, but an inflated ego and emotions in turmoil. The ego is a master of self-preservation. It doesn't want you to accept spiritual truths that run counter to the comfort of what you already know. Have you noticed how difficult it is to admit that you made a mistake? That's that. The ego hates to lose control, even when it means giving up clarity. Anger, fear, anxiety, legitimate emotions, but dangerously capable of distorting our inner vision. When you are taken by them, intuition hides and internal silence turns into noise. The mind is scrambled, the body tenses, and any attempt at self-knowledge becomes an exercise in frustration. And the worst, at these times, discernment becomes hostage to passions and unconscious emotional patterns. The chosen one then stumbles where he once walked steadily. Want a classic example? Making important decisions in the heat of anger, such as ending a relationship or making an impulsive purchase, almost always results in regret. At these times, the ideal would be to step back, take a deep breath, meditate, write in a diary or even take a long walk before deciding. simple actions that restore clarity. Because only when emotions are stilled can discernment finally work. And believe me, this is just the beginning of a deeper internal cleansing, which involves reviewing everything you believe. From a young age, we are taught to obey, repeat, and blindly trust authority figures. School, family, religion, all of this shapes us with ready-made patterns. And when does someone start to question? He becomes the rebel. But, you see, discernment is not born of conformity, it flourishes in doubt. The chosen one knows that even spiritual discourses can be used as a tool of manipulation. Therefore, he does not swallow any truth without chewing first. Deprogramming yourself is like taking off the foggy lenses that society has put on our eyes. It takes courage to say, "Does this make sense to me?" Even if everyone around you blindly believes it. Critical thinking, in this case, is not bitter skepticism, but a way of preserving one's own clarity. A practical example. Ask gurus who promise quick enlightenment, people who sell miracles, or methods that require submission. If they take you away from your own self-knowledge, be suspicious. In fact, a good practice is to consume content from diverse, even opposite, sources and see what resonates with your intuition. Reading works such as The Power of Now, by Eckhart Tolle, or The Courage to be Imperfect, by Brené Brown, helps to expand the gaze and activate this inner compass. Because, at the end of the day, discernment isn't about obeying less, it's about trusting one's perception more. And when this perception begins to fine-tune, a new confusion arises, desire or intuition. Many people confuse desire with intuition, and that, my friend, is a subtle trap. Desire is noisy, immediate, full of anxiety. Intuition, on the other hand, is silent, firm, tranquil. The ego loves to clothe desire in clothes of intuition. I felt it was meant to be, they say, but in fact, it was just a disguised lack. The chosen one learns to differentiate one thing from the other by observing, above all, how he feels after the choice, in peace or in chaos. When the decision comes from intuition, there is a sense of inner alignment that you can't explain, only feel. Desire, on the other hand, generates a kind of urgency, a haste that pushes mercilessly. And look how interesting, repetitive patterns are excellent indicators. If you keep falling into the same types of relationships, making the same wrong investments, choosing the same paths and getting frustrated the same. So it's probably the ego that's flying that plane, not your intuition. Want a hands-on exercise? Anytime something seems too intuitive, wait 24 hours. If the sensation is still there, just as clearly, it is probably a spiritual truth whispering. If the urgency passed, it was desire disguising itself. Inner silence is a fertile field for this triage to happen. And it is precisely this refinement that transforms discernment into a powerful shield, but this, of course, requires attention to the subtlest signs of the world around us. Discernment is, without exaggeration, an invisible armor. He protects not with brute force, but with keen perception. It is what prevents the chosen one from falling into emotional traps or being entangled by manipulations disguised as good intentions. Those who develop this power begin to notice small signs, a look that lasts a second longer, a strange vibration in the environment, an inexplicable feeling of alertness. It's not paranoia, it's intuition on alert, it's discernment fulfilling its role. People with keen discernment do not allow themselves to be carried away by beautiful words. They listen to the energy behind the speech. Have you ever seen someone who says, "beautiful thing," but leaves a bitter taste in the air? That's that. Often, danger comes disguised as charisma. And here comes a powerful spiritual truth: those who do not listen to internal signals become vulnerable to the external. This realization is what saves the chosen one from repeating patterns and immersing themselves in relationships, societies, or decisions that drain their soul. To sharpen this shield, you don't need to become a monk, but you do need to practice presence. Before accepting an invitation, opening the door to your home or your energy, stop and ask yourself, does this expand me or contract me? A practical tip is to keep a notebook of sensations. Write down meetings, places, decisions, and how you felt afterwards. Before long, patterns begin to emerge. And once you see these patterns, discernment is strengthened even more, like a well-trained muscle. Discernment is not a gift that falls from the sky complete and ready for use. It is cultivated, trained, like one tuning a rare instrument. The chosen one understands that strengthening this skill requires daily practice, not accumulated theory. Inner silence, for example, is one of the most powerful exercises. When the noise of the world and the internal noise of the mind are silenced, intuition can whisper clearly. It is there that true discernment is born, in the interval between stimulus and reaction. The practice of mindful observation is also essential. Start by paying attention to details, how you feel in different environments, how you react to certain words, what bothers you for no apparent reason. These signs are like clues that connect you to self-knowledge. Meditation, therapeutic writing, and even solitary walks are simple but incredibly effective methods for training this inner listening. And the most curious? The more you listen, the more the hidden patterns reveal themselves. And speaking of patterns, analyzing repetitions in your life is a true spiritual map. Situations, people, sensations that are repeated. All of this points to areas where discernment needs to grow. Want a practical boost? Set aside 10 minutes of your day to be in absolute silence, without any stimulus. Yes, absolutely nothing. It sounds simple, but it is in this nothingness that a lot of things start to make sense. And then, inevitably, tests arise, and it is in these tests that the soul shows itself. As discernment strengthens, life begins to test whether it is real or just theoretical. And these tests do not warn, they arrive as disguised temptations, corrosive doubts, feelings of isolation. The chosen one, at this stage, feels as if he is being pulled in opposite directions, and he is. These are moments that challenge the connection with the inner truth. That's when life subtly asks, do you really trust your intuition? Or do you just like the idea? These spiritual tests are not punishments, but invitations to refinement. The illusion, for example, can come in the form of a master with seductive words but distorted intentions. Doubt, on the other hand, sneaks in, like a fog that erases the clarity built. And the isolation? Ah, this is a classic. The awakening soul often feels that it does not belong anywhere. It is at this point that the ego tries to regain control, wanting to break with spiritual truths that are in gestation. In order not to be overcome by these tests, the best antidote is the presence and repetition of practices that anchor self-knowledge. Deep readings, such as The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra, help you stay focused. As well as conversations with aligned people, nature baths, and the conscious choice to retreat when everything seems noise. Because, after each test overcome, discernment is strengthened, but ignoring it. This comes at a high price. Ignoring discernment is like walking blindfolded on a curvy road. Sooner or later, the fall comes. The chosen one, when he neglects his internal signals, ends up repeating pains that should have already become learning. It's amazing how the same mistakes return in different guises: new job, new love, new path. But the frustration is the same. The ego, in this scenario, tries to justify everything, but the spiritual truth remains clear: you knew, you just didn't want to listen. And the price of this internal deafness is high. Mental confusion becomes routine, self-confidence plummets, and spiritual connection weakens. The person enters a cycle of stagnation where everything seems almost right, but never really fits. They begin to doubt their own intuition, rely too much on others, and rely on external validation. And guess who feeds on it? Manipulation, which loves to operate in the realm of emotional vulnerability. Without discernment, even the false seems true. A common example is following other people's advice without filtering by your own truth. The person enters a course, a relationship, or a project that everyone said was good, but inside, he already felt that it was not the way. Result? Frustration, waste of time, and bitter learning. But even in those moments, there is a way back. Self-knowledge, once awakened, is not extinguished. It just needs to be reactivated with courage. Making mistakes is part of the path, the important thing is what you do next. The chosen one who ignored discernment can, indeed, find himself with his inner compass. The first step in this recovery is to look back honestly, but without punishing yourself. The ego loves to turn failures into guilt, but true discernment turns mistakes into fuel for self-knowledge. It's like wiping a lens: the more you understand where you've stumbled, the clearer the journey becomes. Evolving spiritually does not mean never making mistakes, but learning faster with each experience. Clarity begins to return when the person accepts the signals that were previously ignored. Going back to practicing inner silence, for example, is a great restart. Another powerful action is to review old decisions and ask, did this come from my intuition or an old emotional pattern? This simple reflection can generate profound revelations and make room for new, more aligned choices. A practical example: start the day with 3 questions on paper. What am I feeling? What does my body tell me about this? Does this decision bring me peace or tension? These questions work as a mental detox and help to reconnect with the essence. And when this reconnection happens, everything flows differently, right opportunities appear, right people approach, and discernment starts to act as a natural radar. And that's when the fruits begin to manifest, both spiritual and practical. Discernment is not only a spiritual tool, it is also a practical asset in everyday life. The chosen one who develops this skill makes faster, more accurate decisions with much less emotional exhaustion. You know that feeling of peace after choosing something clearly? This is priceless. With active discernment, life begins to align more fluidly. What was once effort becomes synchronicity, and what was doubt becomes direction. Energetically, discernment works as a filter. It blocks negative influences before they even get close. You feel it in the body when something is out of your vibrational field. This prevents you from mixing with toxic environments, with people who suck your energy, or with situations that seem good, but hide manipulation. And on the spiritual side, the connection with intuition deepens. You feel more clearly the spiritual truths whispered in the inner silence. The practical effects are as powerful as the spiritual ones. You start to trust yourself more, to respect your own limits, and to take more consistent attitudes with who you really are. Want a real example? People who change careers, end toxic relationships, move to another city, all guided by a clarity that once seemed impossible. But this power needs to be cultivated every day, like a spiritual muscle. Now tell me, how many times have you ignored that inner sign and regretted it later? How many times has the ego spoken louder, and you have confused desire with intuition? It's time to stop sabotaging yourself. Because now you know, discernment is your greatest power. It is what protects you, who guides you, who connects you with deep spiritual truths and clarity that transforms lives. So what are you going to do with that knowledge? Will you apply it in your daily life or let it become another piece of stored information? Will you allow yourself to strengthen your inner silence and break the patterns that bind you? Or will you continue to live on automatic, vulnerable to manipulations and choices disconnected from your essence? The choice is yours alone, and, as always, it starts in the now. If this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Because here, we continue to unveil the codes of consciousness, intuition, and true spiritual freedom. Let's go on this journey together.